Hey now, find the fun, got to find the fun, no choice but to find the fun. Mandate, find the fun. Welcome everybody to today's webinar, What's New in Splash, the Enhanced Marketo Integration. I'm your co-host, Zach Napolitano, aka The Weekend, and joining me as he often does, Splash's product manager and resident Marketo maestro, Tim Alexander. Timothy?
Thank you so much, Zach. Super happy to be here. Super excited to take everybody through all of this work that we've been doing to really make it so that you have a really strong, deep integration with Splash Marketo together.
Thanks, Tim. And thanks, everyone, for being here this 21st day of May, the year 2019, for what's been described by many in the national media as a tour de force webinar experience. And for once, Tim, I agree with the media. Today's a big-time webinar. By the numbers, our integration with Marketo has been among our most popular for a few years now, but the enhanced version of it, V2, if you will, allows for a game-changing level of admin control, automation, and scale that our power users have been dreaming of for a long time now. So, Tim, on behalf of all our customers, I want to thank you for hard work. I a new version of the product, and I think the customers you've shown the integration to have emphatically, right?
Yeah. No, it's been anything from actual audible yes, like somebody hit the main shot, all the way to jaws on the floor, and so it's been really been fun to be able to kind of take this out and show everybody, take everybody for a spin, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm excited to take this joyride today. Before we get started, let's get comfortable first. The first thing you need to know is that everything you see on your screen here is resizable, minimizable, and is free to move around the screen. So as far as the widgets you see here, the first is the media player. Once we get started screen sharing, this window will fill automatically to adjust to front and center. No need to touch this. Widget, keep this open. Before we dive into the software today, we'll be showing a few introductory slides. And then in terms of Q&A, if you have questions for us, bring it. Well, maybe start with a few softball questions first so we can build our confidence. But after that, you can really bring it. And we've saved plenty of time at the end for Q&A, so you can ask Tim, our expert, all your most burning questions. And finally, our list of resources, titled Tools to Be Great. This contains our integration guide, one-sheeters, and our full interactive online course. Speaking of which, take our online course after the webinar. It too is a tour de force. And after you complete it, email me a picture of yourself and the certificate. I'll send you a Starbucks gift card this month. How about that? And just to give you proof, this is sometimes we promote them to Twitter if you give us permission. All right, Tim. Looking at my Gucci, it's about that time. Software time, that is. Let's have a quick look at our agenda, shall we? So we're going to start by giving you an overview of the Marketo integration and its most essential functionality, including all the new stuff. Then Tim is going to show you what the real-life integration in action looks like, so you can get a feel for what it's like to automate all your processes. From there, we'll walk you through how the integration is configured on both the Marketo side and Splash sides respectively. You should leave today with a pretty good feeling on how to configure this yourself. And finally, like we said, we'll have Q&A at the end. Thanks to all who submitted questions in advance. We'll answer all of those. Plus, we have plenty of time during the presentation for questions you submit using the Q&A widget. So go ahead and submit. Remember, softball questions first, build up to the hard ones. And yeah, I think we're ready to do this.
I think we're ready.
Mandate, find the fun. So some in our audience may be asking, what is the deal with this integration? Let's start from the top. First and foremost, one of the hallmarks of this integration has been for quite some time that every action in Splash, I'm thinking RSVPs, check-ins, anything, can create and update your leads in Marketo. It's that simple. And the beauty is that it can be configured on a field-by-field basis. So in other words, every bit of information collected from event registrations, company, job title, I think even UTMs and opt-ins, sync cleanly and automatically back to Marketo. It's a big deal. Sorry, got a lot of sequence there.
There you go.
I swear I do this for a living. Okay. big one, especially in the wake of GDPR. We get a ton of questions about this every integration. This integration allows you to maintain a single source of truth for your unsubscribers. So put simply, an unsubscribe taking place from a Splash email can be set to trigger an unsubscribe in Marketo and vice versa. And Tim, I think the upside here is it prevents marketers from ever emailing an opted out contact from either platform.
Yeah, and there's a lot of nuance that exists in this space because the way that people actually handle unsubscribes in either system, but certainly Marketo, I mean, that is going to be the actual truth for companies to say, what is the preference center? So whether it be the main unsubscribe flag that exists in the lead database, or whether you've created a custom one specifically for event types, you can do a lot of like mapping the unsubscribe from Splash to a specific field or to the main unsubscribe field. And then there's even a more nuanced conversation about what does it look like to have an unsubscribe go from Marketo to Splash, whether it be just kind of like a dynamic sync, or whether it be like blacklists that are happening even before an event, like even before the person's gotten on the guest list. So there's a lot in this one little topic, which we'll get to like a good portion of today, but not necessarily all of it.
Yeah, and it's a good point because I think someone in the Q&A later, the question, sometimes we send our event emails from Slash, sometimes we send them from Marketo.
Yeah.
How do we make sure that we're on equal footing in terms of our unsubscribe? So it's good to know that this allows for that. Okay, Tim, I am no stranger to a Munchkin ID or Munchkins in general. You can see I'm wearing my donut shirt. Candidly, I think you're better equipped to describe the importance of native Munchkin support than I am. So for Marketo insiders, this is a pretty big one, right?
Right. This is Munchkin is the standard JavaScript functionality that Marketo offers to be able to track leads around the internet. So when somebody lands on your page, being able to know that person landed on the page, they had a successful conversion. So we just have native support for Munchkin codes on our page. You don't have to give us the JavaScript or anything. Literally just give us your Munchkin account ID, and we'll immediately know where to put it and make it part of all of your pages. Normal Munchkin rules apply, which basically means we don't know who somebody is until the first time they convert, because it's all the pages live on a Splash domain, even if it's vanity. But that's just a natural thing. We've been doing that for years already.
Great. Cool. So those are some of the fan favorites that we've had for a while. We want to get into the new stuff. That's stuff we're extremely proud of. And before we introduce some of that functionality, the question that I may pose to you, Tim, is why? Why did you set out on this odyssey to take an integration that our customers by and large liked and were successful with and spend, I don't know, almost a year improving it?
Sure. It's a funny thing. Like the most popular integration that we've had for years now has always been Salesforce, right? And so that the way that integration would work is that every time somebody created an event in Splash, it would automatically generate its own campaign and then allow you to have a bi-directional sync with the campaign members, so that if you added somebody to the guest list in Splash, they show up on that campaign automatically. And then vice versa. If you add them to the campaign, they're added to the guest list in Splash. And so it's orders of magnitude the most popular integration. But when you think about where does the events team actually sit, the events team, some companies are big enough that the sales team has its own events team. Maybe if you're that scaled, some of this makes sense. But the reality is most companies are always going to be that the events team is in the marketing department, and the go-to source of the truth is going to be something like Marketo. And for our customers, it's been by and large the most popular request. So customers have said, can we please have the same type of scalable and bi-directional integration, but with Marketo rather than Splash? And so that was the goal. And when we set out on that goal, we even got feedback from people who currently use our Salesforce integration, because on Salesforce you have to actually click a button to pull stuff back. Right. They were like, can you address that while we're at it? Like, we only added custom fields to the Salesforce stuff a little while ago. Address all the things that we had learned from the Salesforce integration in the past and apply that to where people really want it in their marketing automation system. So that was the goal. The focus was really on scale events. You know, a lot of people do a lot of stuff in Marketo, and it's okay to like kind of change things in programs if you're doing 30 events a year. But some of our customers are doing hundreds, if not thousands, of events per year. We've got customers who are doing 800 events per month, and so
I'm sorry, I thought you said 800 a month.
I mean, it's the scale that people use Splash for. It's sometimes can feel a little bit daunting, and that's who we need to build this for. It's going to be for somebody who can say, I can let somebody use Splash and let all of the data that they're collecting, which is so valuable for lead scoring, so critical for my compliance, I can get all of that to be in Marketo without somebody having to go into Marketo and do something manual. Because that's 800 events per month. That scale is absurd.
Yeah, so I think now we're going to talk about some of those features that are in the new feature set. And the first, being essential to automation, is this auto cloning of Marketo program. So put simply, when one creates an event in Splash, that will automatically trigger the creation of a new program through cloning. And I think secretly the beauty of it is it can be done by event type. So in Splash, you could say, okay, if my team creates a happy hour event, then clone this happy hour program, which would be a different program than if they were doing a conference.
Right, that's exactly right. That's critical.
On top of that, user-defined program naming conventions. So when we're talking about scale, organization and meticulous record keeping is everything. And what Splash allows you to do is, upon that cloning, use dynamic fields from the event to clone those programs using the naming convention that your instance of Marketo is programmed to use. Yeah, this can't be overemphasized because it feels like it's almost easy to overlook something like this, it's just the naming convention. But when you're working with Marketo, it really is critical for how you're going to be able to search for things, how you're going to be able to just keep any sense of organization. So we've focused heavily on making sure that things like quarter, if your naming convention involves the quarter, you can pass the quarter of the event as part of the naming convention. Or if you don't allow for underscores. And by the way, all of these functionalities are things that our customers are the ones who came to us. We didn't like make this up. Our customer said, hey, I need a way to replace all of my spaces with underscores or dashes because I never allow a space in a name, but I don't want dashes and underscores in the name of the event when somebody lands on the page. Stuff like that is what we really factored in. Yeah, and I myself, I'm a big underscore guy. If you go to my Twitter, it's funeral_Z. I like that separation. So yeah. Customers, you're in good company. Underscores
all the way.
Good. If you don't like them, though, we give you the opportunity to get rid of them. Okay, another big one, bi-directional sync between your Splash guest list and program member list. So in the previous version of the integration, Splash was just sending guest information to Marketo field by field for RSVPs, check-ins. Now we have the opportunity for, if a program member is added to the program, that guest is automatically synced back to the Splash guest list.
Right. That's exactly right. And the types of things that this opens up are things that, like, realistically you probably can't or probably shouldn't be doing even in Salesforce. It actually opens up wider possibilities. So let's say that you have some lead scoring going on that qualifies somebody to attend a particular event, but you want that event to be invite only so that the only people who are actually on the guest list are the people who can register for the event. You can make that an automated process where somebody appears on the guest list only if they qualify for the hoops that you've made them jump through and actually appear on that program.
Wow. Pretty remarkable. And then, one of my favorites, program tokens for dynamic email sending. I kind of took the liberty of saying dynamic email sending. I'm not sure if there's other use case, but the big thing here is when you create an event in Splash, those tokens are automatically generated in Marketo. Right. So if you are doing your email sending out of the Marketo system, as so many of our customers are, you're able to maintain the same level of recipient level personalization as you would if you were sending from Splash.
That's that. I mean, I'd say you nailed it. Token's going to be used for a lot of different things, but I think email is absolutely the main use case. And so if somebody wants to set up all of their transactional emails like RSVPs confirmations or even check-in confirmations, something like that, all of that can be set up with information about the event that has been set up in Splash and transferred over to the Marketo program. And we're going to show that in real time today.
Great. I think we're just about there too. See, okay, yeah, so those were the main features. That was kind of a lot. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that. Take it you did. Some great stuff coming in from the chat and such, lots of thumbs up, so thank you for that. Keep submitting those questions. What we're going to do now is I'm going to pass the reins over to Tim. He's going to talk about the configuration of Marketo, few slide sequence just to get you acclimated to what to expect. And from there, we're going to jump into Splash. And Tim, correct me, for the Marketo configuration, are you getting into the integration in action first, or did you want to go through the Marketo slides first?
I'd say, just for the sake of it, you know what? Let's do this. Let's actually show the screen. We'll come back and talk about what's required in the setup in Marketo and then how this all gets configured in Splash. But I think that people always want to just get right into it. So
yeah, cool. Let's do it.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. I'm going to press the share button. Let's share my screen. And am I sharing my screen now? Oh, yeah, no.
You're sharing.
I am sharing now. Okay, great. I'm the most tech. Okay, so we're not gonna give a full run through of every feature in Splash, but you can see here I've got Splash open, and I'm just gonna go up and create a new event. So we're gonna kind of do just a very fundamental quick run through. So we're going to call this what did we say?
Maybe Bulldog Bash?
Bulldog Bash. The Bulldog Bash Roadshow is what we're going to do. And we're going to actually say that this is of type Roadshow. In fact, maybe I don't even need that in the name. I'm just going to call this Bulldog Bash.
And that event type's a big deal, or could be a big deal.
Event type, exactly. It can be critical. All right. There we go. We're going to actually have this event here at Splash. And we're going to have this in a few months. We're going to say that this is going to happen in July. All right. So we've got our critical information about the event. We choose a theme. And we've got the event created. So this is the standard way that people just use Splash in general, right? There's nothing new about this, and that's kind of the point. If the events team wants to be able to use something that they can be kind of autonomous, be in their own space, but we shouldn't have to compromise and lose anything because the events team is using something dedicated to events, while the rest of the marketing team may be having their main source of the truth being Marketo. So we've created this event, and then ideally, if we go into Marketo, I'm going to refresh here. I'm not using Marketo Sky yet. It's great, but keeping it old school for a moment. I'm just going to look for Bulldog.
And Tim, that was also your nickname in high school, wasn't it?
That is, yes, it was. Everyone called me old Tim the Bulldog Alexander. Check that. So right away, what I want, I mean, for people who are really in Marketo every single day, I kind of want to show off exactly what just happened here. It automatically generated its own program. And you'll notice that right away we used a naming convention. So 2019, it knew that it was in Q3, it knew that it was in New York, it knew the name, and it even put in the event ID so that you can reference it back to Splash. And kind of critical to all of that, we didn't put any spaces in there. So On the fly, nobody has to go in and clone anything for you anymore manually. You can just go ahead and just create events, and Splash will do the cloning for you. It's also worth noting that if I take a look at my tokens, all these tokens have been populated. So I can use these in, say, an invite email that I'm going to send out to XYZ people. Now, at this point, I don't have any members. So I'm going to go ahead and import some members. So from Splash, I'm going to go ahead and import. Let's do import from the CSV. I'm a big Marvel fan, and so I'm inserting Marvel into my, my presentation here. And we'll go ahead, update existing RSVP.
So right now you're simulating if an event organizer or event marketer in Splash were to upload their guest list,
Right.
There should be an equal and opposite reaction in Marketo.
That's exactly right. So all of the people that I'm adding on here should immediately show up in Marketo. Let's go ahead, refresh this list. Some of these people are RSVP'd yes already, so I'm going to take the rest of these people and actually change their status to invited. All right. And we'll take a look in Marketo, and on the fly, that guest list is populated.
I'm seeing program statuses, I'm seeing names, emails, this is great.
Yep. Now, notice that I have that status of invited. What I also happen to have, because I cloned a program rather than manually creating a program, there's a little nuanced difference there for people who are very into Marketo. I have a campaign set up so that everybody who's invited should automatically receive an email from Marketo. And it's that email that was cloned in. So all of your assets, everything that you want to set up to say, if this is the way that you do a roadshow, then every time somebody creates a roadshow, that will clone an entire program, including all of the interesting moments and all of the campaigns and every bit of automation that you've set up.
Gotcha. And because we have the token set, subject lines personalized, the salutation, everything.
In fact, let's go ahead and do one extra bit. We're going to say Tim, well, let's go use my real name, Bulldog Alexander.
And Tim, as you're doing that, we did get a question from the audience about the process you were demonstrating.
Yeah.
It was asked, by adding guests to Splash, does it account for any dupes in Marketo?
It does. So, and actually, funny enough, we're making some enhancements right now to account for the fact that some people's Marketos will already have dupes, which is something that that fix will be out this week. But what this will do, what it does right now is allows you to decide, are you going to create or update or update only? All right, so every single time it checks, does the guest already exist first, using email as a unique identifier, and if they do, it will then go ahead and update update that lead rather than creating a new one. In the case where you have multiple leads that are already inside your Marketo lead database that have the same email address, then the new feature that we're adding is going to allow you to have a duplicate lead selection policy. They'll say, do you want to take the first one that was created, the most recently created one, or the one that has been most recently updated? So all of that is either there now, or the lead duplicate selection policy thing should be there, I think, this week.
It's great. Do you have any follow-up questions, audience? Send them our way. Thank you, Tim.
So I just added myself, Bulldog Alexander, as a guest in here, as an invited guest. I'm going to go to my actual Gmail. Apparently, I need to log in again. And you can actually see here, here's an email that was actually sent from Marketo to invite me to this event. And it even includes a link directly to Splash.
Love it.
And we can see that that campaign was sent off here. Most of those Marvel emails bounce because they're not real people, and so that we wanted to make sure that we could actually show in a real scaled approach. You could set up a trigger that says for any status, if somebody's been waitlisted or if somebody's been moved to RSVP-yes or RSVP no, or if somebody checks in, you want that to trigger a text message to somebody at your actual company. That type of thing is all real life now.
Cool. So Tim, I'm going to take a crack at answering this one. It was asked, is that email template already created? How can it be edited in Splash? My understanding was that was a Marketo email that was part of that program that was
Correct.
Cloned, right?
That's correct. So I have a base program here. So we called this, I think, Roadshow. There we go. Here's my base program. And it contains all of my assets and all of my campaigns. And so every single time we create an event, it's literally the same thing as going like this, as just right-clicking and pressing clone. And it'll give a new name based on the naming convention that you decide, and then it'll create that entire program with all of the hierarchy the exact way that you set it up.
Gotcha. On the subject, and you can continue jumping ahead, quick one. Can a combination of fields be used in Marketo to avoid duplicates like email plus company? That was a question we got from our audience.
Sure. It's, the idea of using a combination of different things to populate, it's something that we're looking at exactly how we're supposed to handle it right now. There's already a way to use dynamic tags to dynamically generate, like if you wanted to say, give me email address plus the contact ID that's an internal ID in Splash, just to create something unique, we could do something like that. Or the email address plus the event ID. That'd be really easy, but we want to actually work with our customers to say exactly what problems are we trying to solve, because there's a lot of them that are very different that feel and sound similar, and they're actually not when you get into the weeds. So we're kind of figuring that one out right now. But we're happy to take a more deep dive question offline on this.
Cool. All right, Tim.
All right. The last thing that I wanted to do before we start talking about all of like the nuancy setup stuff, let's get back to the Bulldog Bash. Is I wanted to actually bring somebody in from Marketo to Splash. Now, I might need to do this kind of quick. And I've been having trouble importing a CSV file in regular Marketo, so I'm actually going to switch over to Sky for a moment. But let's do Bulldog. There we go. And let's add some more members. Import members. I've got some serial people. There we are. And we're going to go ahead and say the first name is first name, last name is last name, and email is email. And we'll pull them all in onto the wait list. Now, it's either going to trigger like right now, or it's going to trigger in 15 minutes. So everybody Y right away. So let's take a look at Splash and see if we've got new people. All right, it probably didn't go. So and we're going to address why, and we'll see it go right towards the end.
Okay.
All right, so let's get into the actual setup here. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment.
Cool. And Tim, I'll progress through the slides for you.
Cool.
And let you talk through them.
All right. Go a little bit further ahead.
Yeah.
There it is.
We've had some,
One more.
everything's like duping over here. Okay.
Well, got two more.
Three more.
Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Yeah, it did dupe a lot. Keep going. Sorry, folks. Real life here.
There we go.
Yeah, that one right there.
This one?
39. Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to it, how do you actually set this type of thing up? There's really three major concerns you're going to have. One is make sure that you have set up a launch point user and make sure that that user has the right permissions, specifically the ones that are on screen: read-only activity, read-only campaigns, read-write lead, read-write on asset, and activate campaign. Those are the ones that are critical to be able to use the full set of features in the new integration with Marketo. Right? So make sure that you're checking that. Make sure that you're checking that on the actual permissions when you're setting up that user.
Gotcha.
The next piece here is make sure that you set up a base program or a set of base programs that you're going to clone. Splash is not creating a program just by hitting the API and saying make new program. It's got to have from because of the scaled approach that we're taking.
Clones of clones, not a good thing.
Yeah, that's something that's actually been called out specifically by, we didn't just build this in a silo. We worked with Marketo themselves. We worked with a lot of Marketo consultants. And that was called out as do not let people have their base program be a clone itself. All right, so build it from scratch every single time. And also worth noting there, the programs themselves that are being cloned, they're going to clone in the directory of the base program. All right, so that's where they're going to show up. So if you want to know, like, well, where are these programs going to show up? It's wherever you put your base program. That's where they're going to show up. All right, and then the last one. So setting up your program channel statuses. We have statuses in Splash. There's 7 statuses on a guest list in Splash. There's added, invited, RSVP-yes, RSVP-no, and waitlisted, and checked in and checked out. All right. So, and those really don't change. You can call that though whatever you want on the statuses that you've set up or you're already using in Marketo. But make sure that you kind of factor in the fact that statuses work a little bit differently in Marketo than they do in Splash. So for instance, statuses have, like channels have this direction that you can set up. You don't have to. You can set all the status, the step values to be the exact same thing, in which case anybody can move from any status to any other status, and it's just kind of freeform, very similar to the way Splash is. But Marketo also can be set up so that if somebody is invited and then they move to checked in, they can't be moved back to invited. And so there's a possibility that somebody could try and, if somebody fat fingered something or whatever, that could possibly set things to be a little bit wrong. And I guess factor in the fact that we're always going to say that Marketo wins because they have more restriction. So anytime there's an update from Marketo telling us that somebody's checked in, even if they're not, we're going to let Marketo win. So factor that in when you're setting up your channel statuses.
Gotcha.
All right. Those are the big call outs in terms of the setup. You need to make sure you have a user that can do everything. You need to have at least one base program. You can set up multiple base programs if you're going to do different event types. And then thinking through a strategy when it comes to your channel statuses.
Cool. So after Marketo is configured, the next place to consider would be the Splash setup, right?
Yep.
Cool. So let's jump into there.
Yeah.
Give Tim a moment to switch.
Cool.
And then we'll take a look under the hood, see some of the new goodies that have been released for the integration.
All the goodies.
Very excited to unveil this today.
So I should be sharing, again, like I said, I'm the most tech. And we're going to go ahead, and I've already set up this integration. We can set one up from scratch, but I wanted to just have one that was already working. So you saw the one that was working for me before. Let me talk you through each step of this. you're going to need your Munchkin ID, your client ID, and your client secret from your launch point user. So that should be a really standard, common setup for anybody who's set up integrations with Marketo before. That's just the way it works. You'll save your credentials. It'll tell you, yep, you're good to go, and then you can move down to the rest of it. I would always give it a bit of a descriptive name. So every integration in Splash, you can name it something pretty specific. So I would say call it, Marketo bi-directional integration. Call it whatever you want. Call it auto clone if you're excited about the scalability of the automatic cloning. And then you're probably going to turn on each one of these triggers. This is probably the most techy. This is probably the area that I really want to get a little bit less scary for people. All you're going to do is going to go down to, in the clone program, you're going to say create trigger, make sure that's checked. All that's saying is that, yes, every time somebody creates an event in Splash, that you want to clone a program in Marketo. That's all that's doing. Then you're going to pick off most of the statuses that exist on your guest list. So anything you want to transfer over to Marketo, like every time somebody checks in, or every single time somebody RSVPs, anything that you want to go over essentially in real time, you're going to make sure is checked off in this list right here. So these two essentially always happen in real time, or asynchronously in real time, which means as soon as possibly. Sometimes it'll be sub-second, other times it might take longer because there's a lot of activity happening. All right. The reason that I call these two out as real time, though, is because the next two are really talking about the batch syncing functionality. And this is actually one of the big, we just released this, and this has been a major project for probably three months now, and really unlocks the largest clients who might be worried about API limits. This allows us to really have a great answer for that. So from now on, you can say exactly how frequently Splash to Marketo, and you can say exactly how frequently we will pull stuff from Marketo and push it into Splash. And so that's what that 15-minute trigger thing is. And I was looking at the 12:30. I was assuming that, okay, well, every 15 minutes, which is it's about right. It is actually pretty much on the 15-minute marker. It will trigger. It'll get a sync of everything from every program that has been mapped. All right. So making sure that that's pretty clear for folks. This is probably the least truly intuitive. Then we can kind of take a look at the rest of the screens here. Trigger conditions. What this is doing is saying, I only want this configuration to work for one particular or a set of particular event types. So for instance, if Roadshow is the only one that should duplicate Roadshow, then that's how we would accomplish that. And we would just then duplicate this entire integration config and change which event types and which base programs you're going to be mapping up to.
So for our program leaders out there, maybe even the people who aren't configuring the integration, but are overseeing the entire Splash organization, get those program types locked in, so that when your end users are selecting their event type, it's easy to match that up to the program type in Marketo.
Great. Next, we're choosing a base program here. All right, so all you do, this is a search box. You type in, I typed in, say, base program. I'll probably come up with a few of them because we've been testing on this instance for a while. And then you just go ahead and select your base program that you, once the list comes up. It's cycling through a lot. We got a lot of programs.
There you go.
There you go. All right. So I'm not going to change mine for now. Next, we have the clone program naming convention. Now I've got a big long one right here. So this can actually probably look a little bit scary to somebody, but all this is saying is start off with the event start date with just the year, and then give me just the quarter, which always comes back as a number. So I've manually put the letter Q there, and then give me the event type, and I replaced all the spaces, and give me the name of the city, and then the title. Every single time I'm just replacing spaces with underscores, and then the event ID.
Can I give you a compliment, Tim? I have never seen a program naming convention with such nuance. It's really amazing. You've got done yourself.
I've been into program naming conventions ever since I was in high school, and people call me Bulldog. So we have have a lot of the key pieces done. You're making some choices here. You're doing things like, should all the triggered campaigns be activated? In fact, if you saw in Marketo, let me go back to my yeah, there you go, my old view. Bulldog. I wanted to call this out. You can see here I had two campaigns. One of them was turned on. One was actually activated already, and the other one was not. And so what will happen is that if you have this option, this one here checked off, and that will mean that when it clones the program, it'll go through an extra step of pulling down all of the campaigns and trying to turn on each one. Now, if it can't be turned on because it doesn't meet a business requirement, then it simply won't turn on. So in this case, the business requirement that it doesn't meet is that there was no smart list and there's no flow steps in Marketo. All right, so you can't turn this on because it wouldn't do anything anyway. But this one met the minimum requirement. So when we tried to turn it on, it said, cool, it's on. And now every email will send out. Next one, this here, I would actually go so far as to say we can ignore this. We're going to ignore this next this next item here because it's something that is now redundant. It was part of an initial way that we built bi-directionality, but now we can just worry about this. So I would actually say this piece for most people will not matter going forward. The next part is giving the users the ability to skip the program creation. This is especially important for testing. If you don't want to populate a bunch of test events, or even if you're doing an internal event, you might not want to have every event clone a program. So we do give you that option, but you control whether or not users actually have that option. And then finally, this is a huge, big blaring lights call out around around being deleted. So when we were at the Adobe Summit, we were showing some of this off, and we were asking, do you want us to delete people program when we delete a guest from the guest list in Splash? And most people were actually, yes, absolutely, and were surprised that we were even hesitant about it. But anytime a system like ours is deleting anything in a system of record, we want you to be proactive about making that decision. So you can actually see here, this is something that you have to turn on separate from everything else in terms of mapping. If you delete delete somebody on the guest list in Splash, it will be deleted on the program member list in Marketo, and vice versa if that's turned on.
To borrow from your love of Marvel, with great power comes great responsibility.
Oh my God, you're my favorite. The last pieces here are actually they probably shouldn't be glanced over. I want to be sure we have enough time for people to try and address as many questions as possible. Token mapping, this is what's going to give us that ability to populate all of those tokens in Marketo. So they always happen at the program level. And if you already have tokens established as part of your template, it will update those tokens. And if you don't have tokens available, if you haven't already added them, it will add any token based on the name you put here. So we'll create and update tokens as it clones the program. Worth calling out here, because we're going to definitely get this type of question anyway. Right now, the only type of token that we support is text, but we will be addressing that. We will be going after date type tokens, score type tokens, number type tokens, possibly even rich text. So we will be going down that route. And when you change something in Splash, let's say you change the name of the event, or if you change the date of the event, Splash does not currently update those tokens, but we will be.
Gotcha. And I believe there is a question later coming about the date type token.
Sure.
So let's hold that thought.
Okay.
Good call.
All right, cool.
Yeah, for sure. That's a big one.
All right, and then past tokens, the only other thing I really want to call out here is that based on the base program that we selected, we know what channel that base program has, and so we can map up all the statuses in that Marketo channel to the channel, the statuses that exist in Splash. So This is something where you should just be able to set it up and forget it. But all of those pieces are there. And then truly the last piece is exactly what actually the old integration was doing. It was the ability to map any field from Splash, not only first name, last name, and email, but also IP address, also any URL or UTM parameter, all of that mapped over to the lead database.
Someone asked, sorry, Tim, someone asked about the UTMs.
Okay, cool.
How does that get past the Splash exactly?
So today's probably not a session specifically to go through that, although I'd love to walk people through how UTMs and any URL parameter can be passed to any form in Splash.
Yeah.
But the long and the short of it is actually it's extremely similar to the way that Marketo does it. With Marketo, you generally would set up a lead database field, and then you would include that as a hidden question on a form that receives data through the URL parameter rather than through just like typing into the form. Splash takes almost the exact same approach. All right, and so you can just map the exact same thing. You're having the same experience. Cool. All right, that's the whole setup. There's a lot a lot of different sections to think through. Except for once you set it up, you're kind of done.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the configuration as an outsider seems, if you set up really strategic and smart programs in the Marketo end, Splash kind of just enables that to run.
Yeah, that's it. That's the exact purpose. Where the whole goal is to be able to say at the end of the day, can we make it so that we can be hands off, right? If somebody's doing 800 events a month, I mean, and somebody has to go in and manually clone all of that stuff and manually update tokens and worry about are things synced up. I mean, I would imagine that's at least a head count, and that we want to be thinking about really providing real value for real scale events programs.
Beautiful. So Tim, I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your screen now because we are up to your favorite part.
Yay!
Question and answer.
A lot of questions.
So we have some pre-submitted. Have some that came in through the Q&A widget today. I'm going to start with a Q&A widget one, and then we'll jump into some of the ones that you all sent earlier. So this one, Tim, does the 15-minute frequency ever change, and will it take at least 15 minutes to show up in Marketo and Splash?
Yes. So when it comes to the frequency, you have technically you have 4 options. You have 15 minutes, which is the fastest that we support right now. You have 30 minutes, you have an hour, and then you have never, which also is a time. Okay. And so those are the 4 options, and basically every 15 minutes, Splash goes and says, what are the events that have programs that are associated with them? And goes and gets all of the changes that have happened since the last 15-minute increment across all of those programs, and then reflects that in Splash. That's how that mechanically works. We don't have anything that is going to go faster than that quite yet, although we're looking at trying to make it so you can go as fast as 5 minutes. And that's only on the from Marketo to Splash side. When it comes to from Splash to Marketo, you can actually set it up so it also syncs with the same amount of frequency, but you can also set up those individual triggers. Like a lot of our customers, they came to us and they said they only want, this all works great, but check-ins have to happen in real time. So we made a point to give you a configuration that can make sure that all exists. You get the benefits of the scale, but you can still set certain statuses like check-in or like RSVPs. Those can still go over in real time.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to take this next one. It's a quick hitter, and then we'll get into the pre-submitted. But someone asked, how do I update my event types? That drop down we saw in the event creation process in Splash to only show the ones I have mapped to Marketo programs. Right now, that is a really simple setup that will go through your customer success or implementation specialist if you're a customer of ours. So just let them know, and they'll help you configure that. Bigger picture, we will be opening that up as a self-service tool. Okay, so let's get in. Oh,
can I just address one more real quick?
Yeah,
so sorry.
please.
There's a question here about, does this work for smart lists as well, or just CSV files? Can Marketo smart list be used to pull in users, or does this have to be a CSV? So two-parter here. On one side, you could use a smart list to just import them onto the program, and then the sync will take care of putting them into the guest list on Splash. So that's the easy way to do that. However, there's probably an experience that people are looking for that is, hey, I want my events team to only be able to pull people from a smart list that I've defined in Marketo. So they don't have control of the program. They don't have control of any of that stuff. We're looking down that direction as well. So the idea of, from any marketing automation system, being able to add guests in the same way that I import a CSV file, if you connect with Marketo, also be able to import from lists that exist. Not quite there yet. Certainly kind of tallying what are the next things that people are asking us for, because we're only going to do the things that the market asks us for. But that's something that we're definitely thinking through. We're happy to talk to you offline about it.
Yeah, and feature requests that come in through the webinar are more heavily weighted. We appreciate you joining us. Okay, cool. Thanks, Tim. So let's get through some of the ones that were pre-submitted.
Yep.
Let me see if I can read this one.
Okay.
I think you may have solved a huge challenge, but I want to make sure I heard you correctly. Okay, let's see what this is about. I can automate the integration to function differently based on the Splash event type I select. Kind of the theme of what we've been speaking today.
Right.
This came from Sabrata in Seattle.
Right. So I think that we have kind of covered that today. Big takeaway here is that if you have the same way of representing event data for all of your events, or if you're maybe not necessarily evolved on your Marketo journey, you might maybe just say, I just want the guest list as a program in Marketo. Then just set one integration up and let it fly for all the program types that you want. But on the other hand, if you want something really different for each individual event type, absolutely, you can set that up, no problem as well.
Cool. Next fan question is...
Wait, is that right? Did we get another duplicate in there?
Okay, I'm going to go with this one, because I know this is a good one.
There we go.
Okay, this is from Alex in Philadelphia. He asked a question last webinar. Does the bidirectional sync allow you to sync custom lead fields from Marketo to the Splash guest list? If so, how do you set that up? We get this question a lot because folks love seeing those custom fields in Splash, where they're often spending quite a bit of time.
Yes, absolutely. So we made a point. It was part of the requirement from the get-go that it wasn't just going to be first name, last name, and email that could come from Marketo. So any field that you map from Marketo to Splash will also come over, whether that be fields that are on the form or those are fields, well, I mean, all fields, I guess, that you're mapping from an event perspective are on the form, but even if it's a hidden field. And a really great example of this, we had a party at South by Southwest. And so we very much drink our own champagne and eat our own dog food. And so we were able to have it set up so that the people that were checking into the event, we could actually see our ideal customer profile score, which was synced over from Marketo into the Splash host app. So that in real time, all of our hosts knew exactly who they were talking to, the importance and the weight and stuff like that.
Love that. Cool. Great question from Alex. Okay, I'm going to push this next one out. I think we mentioned this at the very beginning, so it's worth reiterating.
Yep.
The question was, depending on the event, we sometimes send emails from Splash. Sometimes we send them from Marketo. If one of our leads unsubscribes from Marketo sent email, can we make sure that it's reflected in Splash and vice versa?
Yes, and the answer to that is absolutely yes. The unsubscribe flag is just another field on the lead database, and we can absolutely update that flag and have that bidirectionally synced. And then there are also additional ways for us to accept unsubscribes from Marketo, even if it doesn't have anything to do with a guest list, which we'll cover probably on a different call.
Cool. Tim, this is a challenging one, but I'm going to send it to you anyway. It says, Tim, the American business environment has fundamentally changed following the insider trading and savings and loan scandal. Can you explain business ethics and how they are applied today?
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and tackle that.
I guess they were not joking when we said save the hard ones for the end. I think that is hard. A little off topic. We'll get back to you. All right, this one is a little bit easier. Well, it was tough, but I prepared this one in advance. It was a great question. It was from a fan who said, Zach, our Marketo admin, can't make the webinar today. Will you be sending out the recording? Of course. And can you give me a tweet-length description of the most important capabilities of the new integration?
Somebody said that to you?
Yeah, well, I think they said tweet length because they know sometimes I get crazy, I yap too much. They wanted me to keep it nice and concise.
That's really funny.
So if you're talking, if you need to communicate this to your admin who couldn't make it, I did create this little tweet here that says, or sums up the new functionality. When you create an event in Splash, we're cloning a new program in Marketo. Splash guest list and program members sync bi-directionally. Tokens allow you to automate personalized emails. Unsubscribes are reflected in both places. And we can create and update new leads. Hashtag tools to be good. Okay, some other questions that may have come in. In reference, this is the one that came through the QA widget, looks like. In reference to the unsubscribe question, do we need to set that up ourselves or is that automatically set up?
That is something that you need to set up yourself. So if you need help with that, the support team, the CSM team, the implementation team, they should definitely be able to help with that. If there's more documentation that's ever needed, we'll certainly make sure that that's provided to you. But it is something that you do need to set up yourself. And the reason for that, by the way, is primarily because if it's just one unsubscribe field that you're tracking in Marketo, then that tends to be really easy. But a lot of times, people will want not the main unsubscribe, but rather a different field that they're using to track unsubscribes for their events programs or for certain types of events. We've got a client that wanted to do different event types. They were essentially tracking, like they had a policy team, they had like a recruiting team. Those are different unsubscribes for them. So stuff like that.
Cool.
You would factor in.
That makes sense. Okay, we have time for about one or two more questions. Here's a longer form question I was asked, and it's a good one. Okay. Tim, I'll let you read this.
Yeah. Okay. We've been able to automate tons of events emails using the program cloning and triggers. For example, every time a guest checks in, we auto send them a thank you email. Great. It's what you should be doing. Does the integration allow me to automate time-based triggers from Marketo? It would be amazing to be able to auto-schedule reminders from Marketo to register X number of days prior to the event. I think that's actually a great question. In fact, we've got a lot of clients we're working with right now as we build this out that have come up with very similar scenarios. So in that scenario, I mentioned before that the token types, we don't support the date type token type yet, but we will be. And so I don't have the exact dates on any of this stuff, but it's one of the next things. When you think about like what's now, what's next, and what's future, it's one of the next things that we're really going to be working on, and it shouldn't be that huge to accomplish. And so once you have date type tokens, you can actually set wait steps based on tokens in a program. So that's the way that you'd be able to, when you clone a batch type campaign rather than a trigger type campaign, you'll be able to dynamically set those values.
Cool. And I think that is a good note to end on. If you have any other questions, email us. We would love to talk more. Remember, check out those resources, because if you take our course and complete it, we'll be sending you some coffee, which is wonderful. And additionally, we're going to be sending out the recording to this. So expect that tomorrow, so that if you weren't able to make it or if you want to check us out again, you absolutely can. Now, I have to say this. I have to say thank you. And I have to say that life is a series of hellos and goodbyes. I'm afraid just for now, this is goodbye. So for Tim, the Bulldog Alexander, and Zach, the weekend here, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye, everyone.